By now, you should have a really good draft as you're working toward your personal essay. So I wanted to take this opportunity and provide some feedback to you as a class. So I'm not going to be working on your papers individually, but this information needs to be applied specifically to your essay. So I'm going to do what I did last time. I thought that was actually quite helpful. So I hope you will find it just as helpful this time as well. I'm going to go over the rubric, and then I have 2 sample essays. I looked around for some sample essays that were provided by BYU Idaho, and I didn't find any. So I went back in some of my reserves and found some student examples that were written for me in my other courses at different institutions. So I hope you enjoy them, and I hope that they can help you see what your personal essay should look like. You've, of course, worked with some for the discussion boards, but this is more student work that you can maybe relate to a little bit better. Okay, so let's go over this grading rubric. This is how you're going to be graded for your personal essay. So I wanted to go into a little more detail regarding it, and then of course I will jump over and look at the sample essays for you and show you how they exhibit this rubric. All right, so always make sure that you have a main idea. You only want one main idea. It's your focus. It's everything. Everything in your essay needs to center on this one main idea. And when you look at the 2 essays that I have chosen for you, you'll see that they're very much focused on just one specific thing. So here it says that it contains a clear personal experience or a couple closely related experiences. I understand at this point you may be really well into your writing process, but what I want to encourage you to do, and what I've actually been told to encourage you to do, is to focus on one experience, only one. Say, for example, when you go back to Annie Dillard's essay or narrative when she's walking through the countryside and how she runs into that boy. That's one experience. It's not related experiences. It's only one experience. And I encourage you to do that because it's easier to organize. It's easier to stay focused on your one main idea. So if you have several different related experiences in your essay at this point and you don't think it's coming together well, think about cutting out 2 and only focusing on one. When you focus on one, again, it helps you to truly focus and to develop your main idea, but it helps your organization and it helps you really get into some good detail and description. If you have multiple experiences going on because of the sake of time and the length of your paper, you're not going to go into as great of detail if you're working with multiple experiences. So I really encourage you to focus only on one. Even at this point, if you have multiples going on, really go back and think if it's working effectively for you. I'm not saying that if you have more than one, you have to stop and completely change your paper, but I really encourage you to only work with one experience at a time because it's easier. All right, so let's move on to support and detail. Make sure that you are really specific. Make sure you give really good description. Make sure that you are showing through your writing as opposed to telling. Get really in depth. Now, you don't have to do this throughout your entire essay. You're going to only want to do it in specific parts. So at some point, you may want to get really specific, and then you'll kind of zoom out. Think of it like a camera. Sometimes you're going to zoom in and get really detailed, and then other times you're going to zoom out. And it's probably paragraph by paragraph. You can choose how much detail you want to give. So in one paragraph, you might be really detailed, and then in the next paragraph, you're going to maybe go through time a little bit so that you're going to be more specific to move the essay along more quickly. But then perhaps in the next paragraph after that, you're going to zoom back in and get into more detail. So it's totally up to you and what you're doing. But change it up a little bit. Sometimes be zoomed in, sometimes be zoomed out, and really work on showing what you are writing as opposed to telling it to your reader. One of the essay samples, I think, does a really good job of that. We'll get to that when we go over that essay. Make sure that you are organizing your narrative well. Usually organization when it comes to narrative is quite easy. Most people go chronologically, but you don't have to. If you want to, start in the present, go back to the past, and then move within the past, say it's a little more recent, and then you go even further back, and then end up in the present again. I mean, that's fine. It's totally fine. However, no matter what you want to do within your organization or chronology, just make sure you use transitions really well so that you can say very specifically where in time you are. And if you don't transition well, your reader's going to be completely lost, especially if you kind of go back and forth. If you start at point A and go to point B, then that's fine. Just make sure you transition accordingly. However, if you want to be more complex in your organization, which of course I encourage you to do, it's gonna challenge you a little bit more, and it may better fit, the main idea that you're trying to deliver. But if you go back and forth and don't just do, a linear time, then transitions are absolutely critical. So make sure you use them effectively if you do that. Also, make sure that you establish your setting and your time. You don't have to be specific if you don't want to. Perhaps you might want to say, okay, in 1979, blah, blah, blah. Or you could say, when I was 7. By saying you're 7, you're being specific as to when this experience happened for you, but your reader doesn't know what year it is. It's totally up to you on, how you establish the time frame that your narrative is placed in. Also, the amount of detail that you give to your setting is dependent upon what you're doing and what you need your reader to know. And then lastly, of course, grammar, mechanics, all of that need to be in place. You've covered all of the grammar lessons by now, so really you should be having some really good, sentence level things going on. Make sure you vary your sentence structure so that you don't just have a series of simple sentences that just really kind of drones on for your reader. And when it comes to narrative, you're telling a story, so make it good, make it great, and even your sentence structure plays into that. So let's take a moment and look at a couple samples. I will, of course, attach these so that you will be able to look at them in depth. So again, this is not written for BYU Idaho. These were written for a community college that I teach for in Washington State. And you can see it was some time ago. So this first one, The Leader Within Me, was written by just a really, really good all-around student. So I wanted to include this essay because it has really good elements of writing that you've learned about all quarter. So it's got a good introduction. It takes a couple paragraphs in order to get into the narrative itself. It starts out more general and gets more and more specific, which is an excellent way to write. They've got really good grammar, really good sentence structure. They've got good transitions. They've got good development and support throughout their paragraphs. So really, this is just a really good overall essay. If that's, of course, I'm sure it's helpful for you in order to see that. Let's see here. The entire essay is focused on one main idea. It's focusing on one event and their reflection on that. It just moves chronologically from beginning to end. So again, in terms of a college essay, this is extremely effective. And then in blue here, I have highlighted the amount of reflection that they have in their essay, because you need to remember that your narrative is not just about a story. It has to have reflection in it. Otherwise, there's no point to it. So you've got to make sure that you've got reflection, or your grade is going to suffer because of that. So make sure that you have reflection. And one thing I want to point out, let me change the view of this paper. So you can see that there's 1 page, 2 page, so 2.5 pages of the narrative itself, and then you've got a full page and then a tiny bit. So about 1.5 pages of reflection. That's how important reflection is. I'm not saying that you have to have mostly reflection in your paper, but at least a full paragraph would be good. If you want to incorporate it as part of your conclusion, that's fine. Otherwise, you could do, maybe the paragraph before. I don't know. It's totally up to you how you want to arrange it. But I just wanted to point out how much reflection is in this essay, and to remind you not to forget to reflect. So what the student does is he talks about the experience he had, and then what comes from it, and then what he learned from it. So he has several paragraphs about his reflection. Also, another thing I wanted to point out is the title of this essay was The Leader Within Me, and then if you notice, the very last phrase of his paper is the leader within me. That's cool because it begins and ends the same way. It creates a frame, but it also demonstrates how well focused that this essay is. So it's a really good one, just in terms of, again, being a standard college level essay with all the writing elements that you've covered so far. This next one just kills me. It is hilarious. So this is the example that I want you to read in order to get a good sense of detail and description. It's not perfect in terms of a college level writing, or a college level essay, excuse me. When he finishes, this is the last paragraph, and this is all the reflection he does. So if, of course, I were evaluating this, I'd say you need a lot more reflection, but I don't want you to worry about in this essay. This essay is all about the detail and the description, and it is absolutely hilarious. So read it, enjoy it. I do point out a couple things like the suspense mentioned in the introductory paragraph. He said, no, he had something much worse planned. You don't know what's happening, but you want to know what's happening. So in this case, if he were to develop his last paragraph more with his reflection on how the experience changed or affected him, then he could place his thesis statement there. And this would be a good example of a paper that would have a thesis statement at the end. But I don't want you to think that this is a bad introduction. He's just kind of leaving you hanging and making you guess. What else? I don't want to ruin it with going into it. You just have to read it. It's terrible, but he does so well in describing this experience. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that, again, it's a good example for you too. Not so much of the writing elements, but just of how well you can describe things and make your reader a part of your story. Orange Goo. It's a classic. I think I've even had my husband read it. It's crazy. It's great. So I hope that these two sample essays help. I hope that going over the rubric helps. Just as with your persuasive essay, if you would like me to look over a draft for you, please make sure you get it into me by Wednesday night so that I can look them over and get them back to you on Thursday, and you can finish up your revisions on Friday. So if you'd like to do that, all you have to do is email me. Let me know specifically what specifically you want me to look for, and then of course attach it to your email. There we go. All right. So have a great last full lesson. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what work you're doing. So just let me know if you need any help, and let me know if you would like me to look over a draft for you. Have a great week.